everybody. Welcome back to the Love Aspect podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Dunley, with her partner and co-host.
It's Joshua Saunders here again. It's nice to be back.
Yes, we really appreciate anybody, who chooses to listen, and we hope our podcast can bring as much joy to you as it does to us here making it. Now, last week, we went through some of the couples in Married at First Sight UK for this year, and this episode is going to be a continuation of that, so we're going to go through the rest of the cast and give our opinions on that. So, grab your cup of tea, snuggle up and have a listen, and we're gonna get straight into it with the next couple, which are Joe and Maeve.
Absolutely.
Now, I will give my opinion, and then, we can get Josh's and so on and so forth. Joe and Maeve. I think, personally for me, Maeve wanted to be a better person. However, her actions said otherwise. Like, as soon as they got married, she was like, Jesus, I need a drink. Like, where's the drink? Very heavily reliant on alcohol. And initially, Joe looked to be quite awkward about that, but then explained later on that it's because when he was younger, he was a party boy himself. And, he's grown up now and realized that's not the way to live life. And to be honest, Maeve surprised me because Maeve was talking about having this 5-year-old son. And, is 30, if I remember correctly. And, having a 5-year-old son, being 30 and still being a party animal is just an issue for me. Like, as I said, she was very, reliant on drink and partying and having a good time. And anywhere they went, she was looking for the champagne immediately, which, is a bit of a red flag for me. I suppose especially, when someone is a parent and they say that they're a parent, it's very hard, I suppose, as a viewer, to not judge someone who, then chooses to drink a lot and kind of always to excess. And I think also that people who do drink to excess, it's not necessarily that they're an alcoholic or they have a problem, but I think sometimes people can use alcohol as a kind of almost like an emotional crutch to kind of get them through situations because they feel very awkward. And it's a way to kind of, I feel, escape needing to be vulnerable. And Maeve later on, learns to calm down and stop with the over-the-top Geordie behaviour and the party girl antics. And actually, becomes quite a decent person. And realises actually, I can love this guy and fall in love with this guy without always needing to be the party animal persona. I can actually be myself, be confident in myself, and be confident with who I am without needing this. Because, I feel beforehand she was very much here I am, here's the party girl persona. I'm not confident enough that somebody could like me for me. So I have to be this big, larger than life persona. And, that's not always the best. And I feel Joe learned as well to compromise. And I think he learned to learn that just because somebody wants to do better doesn't mean it's going to be an immediate thing. It's going to take time. They're going to have to learn how to, become better. And just because he's achieved something, he needs to understand that it takes someone a while to get there. The only issue that I currently see with Joe is that he is used to being vulnerable only when he has control over the scenario. If he doesn't have control over the scenario, being vulnerable in that instance is very hard for him. And, going forward, I could see that being a problem they face because he can only be vulnerable when he's in control of how the vulnerability comes about. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with this couple for sure. That's my take on it. What about yourself, Josh?
So just a little, I don't want to say disclaimer, but just something to point out quickly. By the time this episode should be up, we haven't seen the latest 2 episodes of Maths UK 2025. So if anything has happened, if anyone's done anything within those 2 episodes, we have not seen it yet and we're not up to date. So this is purely going off of what we have seen so far.
Yes, definitely.
So with Joe and Maeve really annoyed me to begin with. I just got a really bad feeling about her, the way she was acting. And I think that I believe that was shown quite early on when she got absolutely trashed. And I think it was either the same day or the following day she was hungover or still trashed or something like that. And Joe tried to talk to her, and I think he was asking her questions, and her answers are just like, just because, fuck off, just because, She wasn't actually giving any reasonable answers. It was just fuck off, just because I say so. And that really rubbed me the wrong way. I really don't like when you're arguing with somebody or debating with somebody and they're trying to make a point and you give them a genuine answer, I guess, or a genuine point, and they give you a very illogical, a very non-answer back. To me, that just says you don't have a point or you don't have a good enough answer. So you have to turn to aggression or saying something stupid. And that's the vibe I got with her in that situation. Like Hannah was saying though, since then, she seemed to have been better. Like I can't really think of anything since that incident that made me feel any, I guess, negative way about her. She seemed a lot better. She was still kind of herself, but she was just kind of being her, kind of being a bit loud, being a bit silly, I guess, being, I suppose, the person she is. But she doesn't, again, it doesn't look like she's done anything inherently wrong since then. So yeah, I've really, for the most part, got no issues with Maeve. Joe, pretty much the same, to be honest. Like Joe, I think when you look at him, you stereotype a bit and you have a bit of an idea in your head of what he might be like. But to be honest, from what he's shown us, he just seems really, he seems fair, he seems very chill. And yeah, him and Maeve actually seem, from that one point I was saying about Maeve getting drunk, like they seem to actually get on really well. And I think he actually did say that he loved her. And I think she said she loved him. And yeah, things seem to be going well so far. So yeah, I've really not got too much of an issue with this couple. They seem to get on quite well. Joe seems like a good guy. Maeve, I think she has her moments, but from what we've seen, she's, not, again, done anything inherently wrong. So yeah, I've not got too many complaints about this couple. They actually seem quite good together.
Now the next couple is a bit controversial. It's Leah and Lee, the two lesbians. Now, as individuals, I really do like these people. They've got good qualities. They're both quite pretty looking as well. But I do think that neither of them understands how to compromise or what that even means. For example, Lee is very into, if it's the right one I'm thinking of, Lee, the one with the short blonde hair, is very into doing, like outdoorsy activities and very into activities. And Leah just really isn't. And, they go on their honeymoon and, Lee can't read the room and arranges for them to do some outdoor activities and zip lining from a height. Leah is afraid, and I just don't feel there's a communication there. So it becomes a problem. And I suppose the thing which Lee did, which I found to be quite wrong and very insulting for me, is that Leah started to have this panic attack about how she really isn't good with heights. She really hates the outdoors. Why would Leah do this? Like, Lee went on the zip line and went down on the zip line anyway, leaving Leah behind to freak out. And I really didn't like that. I thought it was like really abandoning, your partner. That's not good. It's not kind. And to be honest, it's very unaware. You need to be more self-aware and realize that just because you like something, doesn't mean everyone is going to like it. And if someone is having a problem and you don't know how to deal with it, you don't leave the situation. You stay with them and explain that you don't understand how to leave or how to deal with the situation. You stay with them and you explain, I don't understand how to deal with this. You're having a panic attack right now. How can I best help you? That would have just been better. And then, Leah is quite annoying because everything that Lee says is a problem. Everything. She has issues with everything. I mean, Lee can't open her mouth without Leah being in some way disgusted by it. And it's actually kind of gross. Because it's not nice. I understand, in these kind of circumstances, that intimacy would not be there at the start. And I think, to be honest, everybody realizes that. But dang, girl, you have to cut somebody some slack at some point. You know, it can't be that everything she ever says is wrong. Because that shows an unwillingness to learn, an unwillingness to grow, and a severe unwillingness to compromise. You know, like before, as an example, when I watched Indian matchmaking on Netflix, Seema Auntie, the matchmaker there, said to the people who gave her the list of what they were looking for in their partner, you know, okay, you're never going to get 100% of what you ask for. You're always going to get about 70%. And you have to be okay with that. Now, some people are seriously not okay with getting only 70% of what they ask for, but these are the people that fail. You know, you're not going to get everything that you ask for. That's not how this works. And I think a lot of people need to realize that that's not how this works. You know, and it takes ages. You know, as I said, like, Leah has a problem with everything Lee does. It's not regular. It's just, you know, a lot of like, oh, why would you do that for? A lot of snapping, a lot of you don't get it. And it's like, well, you know, if you don't explain yourself, it's not really going to be going anywhere. Now, as the episodes that we have seen so far have gone on, like in the last one, I saw that like Lee was able to open up more, and Leah was able to open up more as well. So they both were able to understand each other a bit more emotionally now. And I think now, you know, the relationship can progress and can get better. Because to be honest, I think, unintentionally or otherwise, I think they both misunderstood each other. Because I think, you know, Leah thought, well, Lee's not interested. And then Lee thought, like, Leah just hates everything. And I think, to be honest, like, you know, Leah was putting too much pressure on herself. That's why she was giving out to Lee all the time. Putting way too much pressure on herself to have to feel all these things. I mean, you don't have to feel all these things. You should feel something because that's only natural. But, you know, it doesn't have to be a problem, and you can take things slowly. However, you have to communicate with your partner in a way that's actually kind and sensible, that that's what you want to do. And you can't, you know, go around, you know, as my grandmother would say, like a bulldog chewing a wasp, or like a face like a slapped arse. You know, she used to say that, actually. It was funny when someone was annoyed, you know. He has a face like a slapped arse, or something, you know. Just really annoyed looking. And I'm like the kind of person, if I see someone that's annoyed looking, and they're all the time annoyed looking, I get annoyed from looking at them myself. Because I'm like, why are you annoyed, you know? And that might just be me. And like, you know, you have to understand how things go. And, you know, like Lee said, you know, that she was looking for, because I think actually I've mixed them up there now, because I've just literally seen on this picture I'm looking at that it says who they are. And Lee is the girl that wasn't trying, and Leah is the girl that was trying. But because they're called Lee and Leah, guys, it just gets confusing. However, you know, Lee's not seeing that Leah is what she asked for. She said, you know, it was difficult to describe her own type. But then kind of, you know, the experts gave her what she was looking for. But even she wasn't content with that. But I don't think that had anything to do with Leah. I think it more had to do with herself. And I think personally, now I don't think she's said this yet, but I think personally in her past, it's a defense mechanism, because I think in her past she was really hurt and is determined to never be hurt again. And so is going into this with, I'm not even going to try because I was hurt before. And you can't do that. You know, I mean, Leah is not responsible for the mistakes of those in your past. She's a new person. And to be honest, I found it quite awkward because, you know, Leah was trying a lot. And Lee just couldn't see it. You know, she was trying a lot and she was trying to be affectionate and to share kisses. And Lee would be like, ugh, or no, or, you know, nasty about it, or have a face on her. You know, we all know people that have faces on them sometimes, and you're just like, why? Like, what you're doing is good. You have a good, you know, you're having a good life. You have a good time. You don't really need to be looking so annoyed all the time. Because it's not even necessarily like she's doing anything wrong. And sometimes, I'm sorry to say, Lee comes across as a bitch. And it's not good. Like, you need to have some kind of nice and redeeming quality somewhere. I mean, now we're getting somewhere with her because we're finally beginning to understand her because she started opening up a bit more. And I don't genuinely think that she wants the relationship to fail. I think she wants to do better, but is slowly but surely learning how to do that. So I think she's kind of moving away from the everything sucks and kind of starting to kind of see more that there is potential. You know, as Sam Auntie would say, you're never going to get the full percentage of what you're looking for. And if you can't accept that, you know, you're probably going to be single for a very long time. And I think she's slowly but surely realizing, okay, look, you know, Leah isn't going to have everything I want, but, you know, she can have a lot of what I want. It's not going to be everything. And I think she's slowly but surely learning that that's actually an okay thing. And I think personally going forward, like the more that she learns to unpack her emotions and her hurts from the past, the stronger the relationship can become, I think. So, you know, Josh, what do you think about Leah and Lee?
I better make sure I get these two right as well, because I actually thought the one with the shorter hair was Lee and the one with the long hair was Leah.
No, other way around. My bad.
No worries. No, I thought the same thing, so I'm glad that you told me. I suppose starting with Leah. Leah, I quite like. Leah, I think she's gone into this. I actually thought, because I'm trying to cast my mind back to I think the first episode they were introduced. And I think she said she's a very kind of high up businesswoman. Mm-hmm. And she might mention that she's strict or very, you know, no BS. Yeah, no nonsense. But she actually seemed fairly level-headed, fairly reasonable, fairly kind of open and quite kind and patient. Which I was quite surprised about. And yeah, I've not got too many complaints with Leah. I think probably the only complaint is kind of like what Hannah was saying. The not reading the room, the kind of picking activities. I am stereotyping here when I say this, but if you look at Lee, and from what little I know by this point, the whole ski trip thing, I know they hadn't really known each other that long, but from what little we saw, it's like, do you really think Lee is gonna be into skiing and all that? And you know, that happened to be the case. She really wasn't. She really didn't like it. Again, I'm stereotyping, so maybe that's not wrong, but it probably would have been good if she asked first or tried to get to know her a bit. Like, oh, would you like skiing? Do you like these outdoor winter activities? She probably should have done some kind of research and preparation beforehand to check, so like we didn't have these situations. But other than that, like I've got no issue with Leah. Like, I think Leah's generally trying hard, and I think Leah's generally, you know, putting in effort and doing what she can. So I've got really no issues with Leah. Now Lee, on the other hand, Lee I don't like. She started out very weak. She was very, like Hannah was saying, basically a bitch. She was horrible. She was very, very horrible at the beginning. And it was like she didn't get exactly what she wanted, so she turned nasty and just treated Leah like trash. And I don't like that at all. You know, it's like she just didn't even want to try, she didn't want to know her. It was just like Hannah was saying, everything was a problem. Like, Leah could do no right. Everything Leah was ever going to do was wrong. And it was really unfair and it's very cruel. Now, I will say Lee did get better as she went on. I think she tried a bit more. And I think Leah and Lee are doing better now than they have from what we've seen. But I still don't like Lee. I still think she's a bitch and I still think she's horrible. And yes, she's better. But I still... A tiger doesn't change its stripes. And that's not to say people can't change, but I think a big part of what we've seen of Lee is who she is. And she could change a bit. She could get better and improve, absolutely. I think a lot of what we've seen is her, and I think a lot of that's not going to go away. So I'm not a big fan of Lee. And personally, I don't think this couple is going to work. I don't think they are meant for each other. I don't think they'll be together by the reunion at the end, personally. If I'm wrong, fair enough, but I'm not seeing it. I don't think they're right for each other. I think they can both find someone that's better suited to them, and I think Lee needs to if this relationship doesn't work out, she needs to be doing a lot of work in all her following relationships, because most people aren't gonna be putting all that kind of attitude.
Very interesting. And now, moving on from the lesbians to the gays, we have Kia and David. Now, for me, this couple, they started off really strong. I really liked David. He was really classy, French, just a wonderful guy. He came down the aisle and he gave his new mother-in-law a bunch of flowers, which for me was extremely sweet and thoughtful. And I just thought, what an amazing start. Like, he wanted to give a really good impression and show, that he was very caring. And then in comes larger-than-life Kia. Now, I feel there was an instant attraction there. And I get the impression from Kia that he feels, because he's gay, that he needs to be larger than life and he needs to be over-sexualizing everything instead of actually just being himself. Because when they go on honeymoon, he makes a lot of, everything is a sexual innuendo. And David kind of says to him, okay, we're both gay and we know this. Can we stop now with the innuendos? And I think, he learns to become more comfortable in himself. And he learns to settle down. And to be honest, he learns to be comfortable in his own skin. And it's actually fantastic to see this kind of almost, here I am, I'm so gay facade kind of fading away, and out comes the real Kia. And they have a lot of love and affection for each other. And they seem to really genuinely like each other, and they get on a lot, So far they haven't really had any kind of, complaints or arguments. They really, they've said they love each other. And I think, they're quite sweet. And I think they both kind of seem to get on well enough with everybody. Not, some people, aka Stephen. But that's because Stephen kind of causes problems, and we'll get to him in a while. But, he kind of upsets a lot of people, really. But, they do the best they can. And I personally love to see this relationship. I love to see it growing and blooming. Love in all forms for me is just really sweet. And I love nothing more than to see, two people that are genuinely in love. Love is love at the end of the day. And I think, the world definitely needs to become more tolerant of people just loving each other no matter what it is. Because, I just feel everybody should be open-minded like that. And it's okay to not understand, because I think a lot of people don't understand things like that. But, I love love in all of its forms, and just think that's quite important to put out there. Because, we're a love channel, but, we're LGBTQI+, friendly as well, and we love things like that. And, members of my family are part of that club as well. And, I think it's just lovely. It's really nice. And so, yeah, that's what I thought of Kia and David. What about you, Josh?
Kia and David. I feel like I don't have a lot to say about this couple. Well, that's purely because, I just think they're great together. I think the only complaint I might have is kind of like what Hannah was saying again, about Kia maybe being a bit OTT at the beginning. But I think they squashed that really early on, and yeah, I think ever since then they've been really good. Obviously, I think it was Kia that had the tiff with Stephen, like Hannah was saying, after a comment he made to his wife. But that's not really anything to do with Kia and David's relationship. They together they're good. They're really good, and I really wish I had more to say. But they're just good together. I've got no complaints. I've got no real notes. I think they're good together from what we've seen, and yeah, they're a strong couple. I can see them still being together by the end.
Definitely. And then the last couple to speak about is Nelly and Stephen.
Oh, yes.
Now, the impression that Stephen gives me is that he's not worldly traveled, and he's not the kind of person that has got out much. Because, I'm not sure what this is actually called, but when Nelly comes, she enters in this divine dress, being carried by these 4 men on this platform which is smothered in flowers. Absolutely gorgeous looking. I thought if I got married to Josh, might I enter that way? I don't think so, because I don't actually like being the center of attention, so maybe not. But I might do it if it was for like a photo shoot or something, because it just looked gorgeous. And you could see when Stephen did turn around that he was really shocked by the flowers, and I got the impression from his facial expression that he was kind of like, my God, what am I supposed to do now? I mean, she looks lovely, but whoa, the flowers, And then they had the wedding, and it was nice, and the honeymoon was nice as well, and they were initially both like very attracted to one another. However, Stephen developed issues with not being able to communicate properly what was going on, I suppose, outside of the experiment. And like Nellie had said, she was in the bath, she slipped and fell, and either fractured or broke her rib, and was in a lot of pain. And she said that the entire cast of Married at First Sight, aside from her husband Stephen, came to check on her, ask her how her rib was, and ask her if there was anything they could do for her. Stephen was not there. And more to the point, he didn't actually care to be there. And when it was brought up to him, he essentially called her an effing idiot and told her not to bother. And that, he couldn't be there for her because, his stepfather or something was in the hospital and he was having to deal with that. And I dislike how he used that as an excuse for his, pardon my French, shit behavior. He behaved like an absolute ass. And he couldn't handle the fact that he might have to actually be accountable for his actions later on when it was called up during one of the commitment ceremonies. Why wasn't he there for his wife? That's not good. It's absolutely crap. And he is shambolic, in my opinion, for this. I know damn well that if I had any kind of problem like that, despite what was going on in his life, Josh would take immediate time to make sure that I'm okay and that I'm comfortable. And if he did have to go because, his dad or someone else or whoever was in hospital, he would make sure I'm okay first and then go. He wouldn't just go. And as I said before in the last episode, the couples all split up and half of them go to a spa day, the other half go and they make cocktails. And when Nellie is at the making cocktail party, herself and Maeve get into an argument because, Stephen has been treating Nellie really badly. And Maeve kind of just says to her, but why the hell don't you just say it like it is? Why don't you tell him to cut it out and to stop it? And Maeve is pushing too hard, and it was uncomfortable to watch because you can see that Nellie just isn't that kind of person. She can't just tell someone where to go. She's not that kind of individual. And Maeve can't see that. Now, all Maeve can see is that if it was her relationship, she wouldn't take that kind of crap from somebody. Because let's not lie, Maeve is kind of almost a little stronger, I think. And I think, I suppose I wouldn't be able to handle that kind of thing either. Because I couldn't handle that. So, Maeve keeps kind of pushing Nellie and pushing her to kind of tell Stephen where to go. And Nellie gets quite stressed and storms off. And then we go over to the other group of people in which Stephen is a part. And they have had, a spa day and treatments. And they're talking to Stephen. And they're all saying basically about how shambolic his behavior was. He can't take it, and he storms off as well. The difference, however, is that Stephen doesn't just storm off. Stephen is actually kind of aggressive. And I get the impression that Nellie is actually afraid of Stephen. Because he goes from 0 to 100 in 0.2 seconds. He gets really angry. He can't handle that he has to be accountable for actions which he himself took. And he throws a glass which appears to smash. I mean, he's actually quite scary to look at for me. Because I've never seen somebody who can get so volatile and viscerally angry in 0.2 seconds. How does someone go from just being regular to screw you and screw everybody else? He's completely unable to accept accountability for his actions. And I mean, to be honest, I know they probably don't have a choice. But if you choose to stay around someone that's like that, you kind of have to be looking at yourself as well. Because both people are accountable here. He is worse, but Nellie is also there. So, there needs to be accountability on both parts, I think. And I think, like, he needs to be told by the experts, if they haven't already, that he's got anger management issues and he needs to get that sorted. There is no excuse on this earth for calling someone that you're with a stupid idiot, especially when they fell and they broke their rib or fractured it and you were not there to offer them help or comfort. I mean, how alone does she have to feel before he realizes he was wrong? I'm so offended by this guy. He is childish, he is immature, he lacks accountability and responsibility. It couldn't be me, because I wouldn't put up with someone like that. I'm different than Nelly, but I wouldn't. I'd have to leave, because to be honest, he's scary. What happens the next time he gets mad? Well, I fear that if he continues to keep getting mad, he might eventually hit her. And I don't even mean that nastily, but it's just the way his vibe is, and that's the way his body language is going. I mean, I'm not the most epic at reading body language, but that's the impression it gives me, and it's really uncomfortable to watch. And you feel like saying, if you could jump into the screen, you'd send him off for counseling or something, go and get some help. He has a lot of problems, and, she's not one of them. But is collateral damage to whatever he's going on in his life. She is collateral damage to whatever he has going on in his life. And I don't like the fact that he used the excuse of like, oh, my parent is in the hospital, so I can't focus on you right now. That's not acceptable behavior. Be an adult and do the right thing, or shut up and leave, in my opinion. Now, Josh, we'll go to what you think about them before I get too heated, because he is pissing me off.
Yeah, Steven's a complete pain in the backside. So, I find this couple very, as a couple I'm saying this, disappointing. But I say disappointing in the sense of they started out so strong that it was unbelievable. Like, I believe, they went on their honeymoon, they were having... Actually, I started the church. They seemed to really hit it off straight away from the church. They both seemed very attracted to each other. They both seemed to get on well. Things seemed to be going well. And then on the honeymoon, things seemed to be going even better. Like, I remember there was that really sweet moment where, I think it was on the last night of the honeymoon, Stephen wrote Nelly a letter, I think. Or he might not have, I might be misremembering, but he gave her, I believe it was a photo frame covered in shells that had a picture of both of them in from their honeymoon.
Yeah.
And that really touched her. And they actually, to me, they seem like the strongest couple to begin with, which is why what Stephen did was so unbelievable. Like, when I first saw that clip of him being angry towards Kia, I was like, this is out of order, but is this a one-off? And even if it was a one-off, it was still, completely wrong, he was wrong to do what he did. But I generally thought maybe he was just having a moment, or he was just, I don't know, he let something get the better of him, like something really rubbed him the wrong way. And it was just like, maybe it really touched this, whatever happened, it touched like a sore spot, and that's why he was like kind of singing from 1 to 10. But no, as we see it, as we watch the show, we see him constantly being like that. And he seems like a completely different person than he did on the honeymoon and at the church. Like, it was unbelievable to me, and that's why I'm saying the relationship itself, the marriage, is the most disappointing. Because it looked like they had probably the most potential to begin with. But Stephen, as an individual, like Ken was saying, like he has terrible anger problems. He is so aggressive. He goes from 1 to 10. To be honest, he can't seem to not say the wrong thing. Like, there was that whole situation. I think they were trying to kind of talk out. I think it might be the Kia situation. I think they were trying to talk about that. Or maybe it was Nelly breaking her rib, that situation. I think they were kind of coming to the point where they were getting past that. Or trying to anyway. They were on the bed next to each other. And I think they were trying to have a conversation. And obviously, again, Stephen went from 1 to 10. And I believe he said, fucking idiot. And he tried to say later to the professionals, that he meant the situation. I don't know what situation you'd call a fucking idiot. I mean, that's more of a director at a person. I mean, if I were to give him grace, and I'm not saying this is what he meant, but the only explanation I can think of is maybe he meant to say fucking stupid, as in the situation is fucking stupid, and he said idiot by accident. I'm not saying that is the situation. That would be the only plausible reason I could think of if I were to give him grace. But I think he's BSing, to be honest. I think he was calling her fucking stupid, and I think you need to own up to that. You know, even if that's not what he meant, he didn't try and apologize and say that's not what I meant. He carried on. He didn't back down. He didn't elaborate on what he meant, or, you know, backtrack and try and resolve it. Try and tell her that he misspoke. He just carried on. So I don't think. I think he was aiming that at her personally. And it was absolutely wrong to. And I think this is the thing with Stephen. Situations can't be resolved between him and Nelly because he's just too aggressive to sit down, have a genuine conversation without getting heated, admit where he's wrong, and try and work past it and be better. It just seems like he doesn't care. It just seems like he'd rather tell everybody else that either didn't mean what he said, or that's not how he meant it, or what about what she did, or what about what everybody else has done. There's very little accountability from Stephen. And another situation, the whole meetup, the whole dinner party-esque situation. Apparently he had been telling people, I don't know if it was at the party, but he'd been telling people that he had sex with a Z-list celebrity 2 weeks before he got on the show.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, he did.
He did. And I think me and Hannah kind of had a similar view on this. And obviously say your side if it's not right or if you've got some more input, Hannah. But we were kind of like, okay, morally it probably isn't the best thing or the best look, but he wasn't married yet. Was it wrong for him to have one more?
A last hurrah.
A last hurrah, yeah, before he got married, possibly for life. Like, did he really? And I know it's a moral thing. I know some people will say, you know, the marriage is only 2 weeks away. He should have been focusing on that. He shouldn't have been going out and getting his jollies. But to me, it's kind of like, if this is going to be his final hurrah, which we don't know if it is. Like, I doubt it will be from what we've seen. But obviously, this is with foresight. Without foresight, he might have been with Nelly for the rest of his life, for all we know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's personally a huge deal.
I don't think it's necessarily wrong that he did it, but I do think it's wrong that he wasn't transparent about it, because it's only gonna make him look worse. To be honest, no, does he need to be looking any worse? I don't think he does. And to be honest, like, he's extremely defensive about everything. Like, even with the experts, you know, he's very kind of good, I guess, at manipulation. But what about me? But what about my feelings? And he says that a lot just to avoid needing to be vulnerable and accountable for what he's done. He'd rather say what about my feelings than ever admit he was wrong. And I imagine, to be honest, he's the common denominator in a lot of his relationships and why they haven't worked out. I am interested, of course, you know, to see where this will eventually go. I do feel quite sorry for Nelly. However, I do feel she put herself in that situation as well. And I think it's for the best if the experts tell the both of them, you know, that they need to leave the experiment and not be with each other. Because I think, to be honest, he can kind of bullshit all he wants to. If he's not willing to actually put in the effort, it's going nowhere. And I don't think he's going to want to put in the effort. How many more people that aren't Nelly is he going to have to snap at before Nelly finally realizes, okay, time to cut loose? It's not, he doesn't deserve her. He doesn't deserve what he needs is therapy. He doesn't need a wife. He needs therapy and a hell of a lot of it.
Absolutely. Like, Stephen, he's just too much of a loose cannon. I think you just can't trust Stephen. I've not really touched on Nelly. Nelly, I don't have too much to say, but I suppose in the best way. Nelly, you know, she's And I'm not just saying this because she's putting up with Steven, or she's, I suppose, the victim in this situation. But Nellie, she seems like a fair woman overall. She seems like a very strong woman as well. Like, she does not kind of back down to Steven's crap. She, sticks up to him and gives him back what he's dishing out. I suppose if I had to have one complaint about Nellie, I think maybe she doesn't have to. I think he's very hot-headed. We know he's gonna argue. That's on him. That shows his character. I'm not saying Nellie shouldn't stick up for herself by any means, but I think maybe being hot-headed back to him isn't always the best way to combat Steven.
It's only gonna add fuel to the fire.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it's in some of these situations now it just needs to be like, alright, if you wanna, throw your tantrum, I'm out of here. I'm walking out of the room, I'm going somewhere else, because, you can cry on your own and maybe, think about what you've actually done and come to your senses. But Steven probably isn't gonna do it. It doesn't come off like that, unfortunately. But, leave the baby to throw his tantrum.
Yeah.
Steven just... This is another relationship that I don't think it's going to work. Again, hopefully by the end they aren't together, and if they are, then I think there's something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, a baby who didn't get his dummy and throws all his toys out of the pram like, every time he doesn't get what he wants,
Exactly. But Nellie is a person, I do like Nellie. And it's a shame Nellie was matched up with Steven. And I suppose maybe in a sense there's a bigger shame that Steven, or what they had, isn't what continued to be. Because if it had carried on like it did at the church and the honeymoon, they might have been the best couple of the season.
They might have. But I think, he was kind of putting on a slight persona. Like, I think he was kind of putting on this persona of being what he thought she might want him to be instead of who he actually is. And, I think he's just dealing with a lot of demons, I think, and skeletons in his closet that he doesn't quite understand how to deal with. And unfortunately for him, it's not just Nellie. Like, he's approaching everybody with this whole, like, it's me against the world and I'm gonna fight everybody. It's not just Nellie. Like, he's fighting everyone. And if you're going out fighting, you're already losing. The second you even go in, you have to kind of be able to think logically, like, is this what I want? Is this what it should be? If it's not, why? And he needs to be really doing a lot of introspection and looking at himself and thinking, how can I behave in a better way? How can I be better? Would my mother be proud of how I'm behaving right now? Because I can guarantee the answer would be no, she would not. And sometimes we need to be thinking of, how would others think of this? What about my dad? If I did that, what would he think? Or whoever it might be in his family, I don't know, But there just definitely needs to be a lot more thought about, what he's doing, a lot less talking back and a lot more listening, and things might be kind of semi-okay. But ultimately, this is another couple that I think just really need to call it quits. It's not kind of, for me at least, it's not like Leah and Lee, where I can see that they could get somewhere. It just takes work. Like, they could get somewhere because it takes work. I can't see Nellie and Steven getting anywhere because he's a stubborn ass who will never admit to being wrong, and I think they should just call it quits while they still can.
I agree, absolutely. Steven and Nellie, not good as a couple. I think the fault, and it's hard to say how they'll turn out because of Steven's actions. I want to say it would work out well if Steven wasn't as aggressive as he is. I don't know. Maybe other things would have came to light. But as from what we've seen, Steven and Nellie, I like Nellie, don't really like Steven, and I don't think they're a good couple. We've still got a little bit of time left, so I suppose I was thinking for the last few minutes, Hannah, if you wanted to, we can go through the 9 couples we've spoken about, and maybe we could both say who we think will and will not be together by the end of the series.
Yes.
From what we've seen.
Absolutely. So, we can go through the different couples and see. So, okay, Anita and Paul did not make it.
No.
Julia Ruth and Devharney are still in it, but to be honest, both of them are being dishonest about different things. And as I said before, like, Devharney is very like glass half empty instead of glass half full like Julia Ruth. And I don't really see this going anywhere, because when they did that whole kind of let's rank our values test, like, their values were not at all aligned. And so I just genuinely can't see that going anywhere. What about you? Do you see it going anywhere?
There might be slight improvements. They might stay together till the end of the process, possibly, if there are improvements. But I don't think they'll ultimately be together by the end, nah.
And then Leah and Lee. I can see improvements for Leah and Lee. I'm not sure if it'll be romantic. And I think they may not end up together like romantically, but I feel they could be like really solid good friends for life, I think. I could not see them being romantic. If they are, it would be nice, because obviously I love love, so I'd love things to work out. What do you think? Do you think Leah and Lee would work out?
I think I might have foreshadowed this earlier. I mentioned it briefly. I think these are another couple that I can see. Well, we've already seen improvements. I could see more improvements. I think, again, they could still be together by the end of the process, but I think by the reunion, I think they would have separated. I don't think they'll be together.
And then there's Maeve and Joe. To be honest, it's a weird one, because I can't see them working out long term, but I can't kind of pinpoint why I feel like that either. It's just a feeling that I've gotten. Like, I feel like, they're not always all that serious sometimes. I feel like, Joe is not as in tune with his feelings as Maeve is. And when it comes to being vulnerable, like, they have a situation where Joe just leaves and is not able to be present to kind of like discuss his feelings. And so he kind of cuts and runs instead of actually facing them. And I don't know, is he afraid that Maeve wouldn't be able to handle whatever his emotions are? I'm not sure. But someone that can kind of cut and run, they're not that secure, in my opinion. So I couldn't see them working out, really. Like, what about yourself?
Yeah, I think I said earlier that I think these two make a good couple. And I guess I'm maybe being a bit of a hypocrite now. So I do think they make a good couple for this process. And I think they will make it to the end and still be together. I think like what you were saying, Hannah, I don't know what it is. It's more like a gut feeling, I guess. But something is telling me long term it won't work. Like, even if they're still together by the reunion, which I'm not convinced they will be, I can't see them together for life. I don't know, I've just got a gut feeling. It's nothing more than that. I can't see them being together forever. I don't know, something's just, I can't put my tongue on it, but I can't see it working.
Yeah, and next, of course, is Grace and Ashley. Now, to be fair, although there have been improvements, for me, at least, Grace is just always going to be a problem. And they need to call it quits, because Grace is just always and ever going to have problems with being touched. She's going to have problems with it being discussed with the experts. Grace, by the way, that's why the experts are there. Nothing gets solved if you're not discussing it with the experts. That's why they're there. Use them. That's what the experts are for. Utilize their skills. I don't think that they'll work out, because, to be honest, I don't think she'll ever be able to get over her not wanting to be touched. I do think she feels strongly for him, but I don't think she'll ever be able to get over her fear of being touched. And to be honest, I don't think Ashley is going to really want to have to be thinking and overthinking all the time everything he says so as to not offend her, because that's not regular. He has to do a lot of overthinking. And like when they met his sister and stuff, like his sister was kind of saying, well, you have to be a bit more easygoing with him. He means well, and she's not willing to do that. What do you think about Grace and Ashley?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Hannah on this one. I think I mentioned in the last episode that it was just one thing on both sides that's really kind of keeping them apart. But other than that, they actually work out quite well. I think, again, for both of them to be together for life, it would just be too much of an adjustment to who they both are. I think she kind of needs to have that semi-extreme feminist feel and outlook, and I think he needs to have that kind of, I suppose, old-timer viewpoint. Like, I think that's not that they can't both improve or haven't improved, but I think there's improving on an aspect of yourself, and then there's changing or getting rid of an aspect of yourself. And sometimes I think that's such a big part of who you are that you'll never really be able to get rid of that part of yourself. And I kind of feel like with both of their outlooks, I think that's a big part of what makes them them and what makes them who they are. So I think they both can't live without that part of themselves. So I think ultimately it won't work out for that reason.
Yeah. I mean, Sarah and Dean did not work out. Now, Kia and David, I could see them being together definitely for the long term. It's an absolute pleasure to watch them. They rarely, if ever, have any kind of disagreement. And to be honest, like, they're a good example, for me at least, of what a healthy relationship looks like. They love each other. They back each other up all the time. If someone says anything bad about the other, they have each other's back. And, a bit like Josh and myself, I guess, in that respect. And it's quite refreshing to see. So I definitely think they're going to work out long time. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with Hannah. I think, they're great together. I think they really love each other. I think they really enjoy their time together. I think they'll face challenges in the future when they're living together. But I think that's just par for the course, being in a relationship. I think every relationship has road bumps. No one sees eye to eye 100%. And we're human, we all make mistakes. But for the most part, I think they really do love each other. They are really happy together. And I think they can get over any, hurdles that do come in their way. So I think this is a couple I can see, making the long haul. I think I can see them getting to the finish line.
And obviously then we have, Nelly and Steven. Now let's not lie, guys, these should not make it. And I don't think it would be healthy for either of them if they make it. Because, they both have unhealthy habits, Steven more so than Nelly. I think Nelly needs to kind of learn to understand more her self-worth. And to understand that she's a beautiful person inside and out, and she has power. She doesn't have to take this kind of behavior. She could choose to save herself and leave. And sometimes, to be fair, it is safer to leave. I'd rather leave and be upset that I left than stay and be devastated because someone is being abusive. And even if it never gets physical, for me, I suppose, as a person, I have always had this, fear, and a very intense fear of people shouting. I remember before being in a situation where somebody was shouting at someone else in the same room as me. The shouting wasn't even aimed at me. And it absolutely terrified me. And then the person turned to speak to me and they spoke quite normally. Like, oh, how's it going? And I was like, in the name of God, the person shouted so much that it really scared me. So I suppose when I see him, behaving like that and freaking out, essentially, I tend to kind of freak out internally about the fact that he's consistently shouting. Because not only is it terrifying, it's actually irritating as well. I mean, who wants to be hearing someone shouting all the time? If you can't have a regular conversation with someone, you need help. They don't need to be together. And so the long and short of it is, I don't think that they're going to work out, and I don't think they should work out. What about you, Josh? Nelly and Steven?
Yeah, kind of what I was saying earlier. They shouldn't even be together now, let alone in the future. Steven, he's a wrong un. He's got a lot of work to do, if he bothers or even cares to do the work. Nelly, she can do better. She should be with better. These two, yeah, they're not gonna work. Like kind of was saying, they shouldn't work. They shouldn't even be together now. No, they won't make it. They won't be together for life.
Yeah,
definitely not.
Definitely not. So, that's so far our predictions. We hope that you've enjoyed the opinions that we have shared in this week's episode. And of course, as you know, all opinions are our own. You may not agree with them, and that's perfectly fine. The world is in need of variety. It is the spice of life, after all. So just enjoy. We thank you so very much for watching or listening to us. And, stay lovely, everyone. And have a great week ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much again, everyone, for listening. Or if this is your first time listening, thank you for joining us on this episode. I think I kind of mentioned this earlier, but again, a lot of this is done without hindsight. Again, we're only so many episodes in. Well, we've kind of seen what we can see at the point of this recording. So obviously there will be a lot to see that we haven't seen yet, or isn't available yet. By the time it comes to the end, who knows what views we'll have? Who knows what we'll see by the time this is done?
Opinions are definitely subject to change, guys. And remember to like, to share, comment, and subscribe. And leave all your comments below. We're very interested to know what you think of Maths UK.
We are, yes. Well, like Hannah said, give us a comment. We'll reply the best we can. So you're more than welcome to. And yeah, just again, thank you for listening. Whether this is your first time or you're returning.
And eventually, obviously, when we learn more about what happens, we'll probably have more opinions then as well. So just have a great week, guys. Love and light to you all.
Love and light to you all. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.